Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Wildlife Week series. Uh, we know the topic which we had decided for today. We could not take that. The speaker was not well, but our viewers are very important to us, and we have managed to organize another lecture for you all. And I'm pretty sure a lot of you are very excited for this topic, as am I. So, to start off this session, IVSA, it stands for International Veterinary Students Association. So, it is a global organization of students, veterinary students basically. And IVSA Mumbai is a local chapter for the same. And we are very new and we just got started. So, this is very new for all of us also. And yeah, so welcome to everybody and welcome, sir. Thanks for giving us your time today. Neil, can you continue?
Hello everyone. So we are your today's moderators. She's Ruchi Latkar from second year Bombay Veterinary College, and I'm Indranil from Bombay Veterinary College, same second year. And I hope you enjoy today's session. Over to you, Ruchi.
Janvi, is your mic working?
Yes, it's actually working, and I'm sorry I couldn't join you guys earlier than 1 minute. Sorry. Yeah, so I think Ruchi has introduced you all about IVSA. So without any delay, we should start with our session today, I think.
So our speaker for today, Dr. Yaduraj, is working as the Assistant Director, Veterinary and Research for a wildlife conservation and welfare organization by the name of Wildlife SOS. He works with the rescued dancing bears and elephants, as well as many other wild animals that the organization regularly rescues and rehabilitates. He is currently in charge of the Elephant Conservation and Care Center and also India's first elephant hospital that is situated in Mathura.
Being an elephant vet, he has led many elephant care and management workshops and the elephant veterinary inspections in different parts of the country. Currently, he is pursuing his PhD in reproductive physiology and behavior of sloth bears. He's also led several other research projects undertaken by Wildlife SOS.
So once again, thank you for joining us, sir. I think we should start with the session. So we will be in the background if you need us, sir.
Sure, yeah, thank you very much. Thank you for introducing me. Yeah, as I said, my name is Dr. Yaduraj, and I've been working in the field of wildlife conservation and medicine for about 15 years now, since I completed my BVSc or my graduation in veterinary sciences. And today I'm going to speak about, I think, an interesting topic, which is the role of a veterinarian in wildlife management and conservation, which is basically going to be an introduction to the wildlife field and how vets can function well, or how vets can contribute into the wildlife conservation and wildlife medicine field. So when we talk about wildlife, especially vets working in the field of wildlife, there are two scenarios that we are talking about. There's of course captive wildlife, which basically means, in Western countries they call it managed wildlife, which basically means the wild animals under human care, such as zoos and rescue centers, etc. And then we have free-ranging wildlife, which is, of course, the animals in the wild, the animals in the forest, urban wildlife such as snakes, birds, that sort of thing. And vets do play a very important role in managing the free-ranging wildlife populations as well. I will explain how as we go through this presentation. So let's start with captive wildlife, because vets generally play a very major part, or most of the vets that I know who are in the field of wildlife are working with captive animals mostly. There are of course vets who work more with free-ranging wild animals, but this is very common with the vets who have got into wildlife field to start with the captive facilities or the managed wild animals. And as I said before, when we are talking about captive wildlife or managed wildlife, these are the major three categories that we are talking about. One is zoos, of course. You all know what zoos are. Rescue centers are the places where the wild animals are brought. It can be, like our case, a sloth bear or a bear rescue center, or an elephant rescue center, or it can be a reptile rescue center, or it can be a composite rescue center where there are all sorts of wild animals, including birds and reptiles and mammals and that sort. And generally, the animals who come to these facilities have some issues with them, or they have been rescued from very different or difficult situations, and they cannot be released back to the wild. Or there are animals who need treatment for, let's say, weeks or months, and they're kept there for that period. And there's other third category such as elephant camps. I'm not sure if all of you know what an elephant camp is, which is basically a facility managed by, established by, and run by the government, by the state government. We have many of them around the country in India, and they have elephants there which are used for different purposes, such as they're used in wildlife conflict situations, or they are used to patrol the natural parks and the wildlife reserves, which is a great place for the elephants as well. And there might be other such places that are managed by the government. So I'll start with what vets generally do. As I said, this is going to be an introduction because I don't know how many of you have been exposed to this part of or this aspect of veterinarian career. So what all veterinarians are involved in, or what all veterinarians can be involved in when they are working with wildlife. So let's start with captive wildlife because that's most common, as I said. So of course, being vets, we do treatments. We do treatments of all sorts of animals. So this is a picture where I'm treating an elephant for some feet problems, which are very common in captive elephants. So of course, that's a major part. Depending on what sorts of animals you're working with, elephants or reptiles or birds, you will get different kinds of injuries. You'll get different kinds of diseases. A lot of people don't know that a lot of infectious diseases, such as common diseases, FMD, foot and mouth disease, can be quite common in wild populations, or black water, or rabies. Of course, rabies can be common in wild animals. So you treat those kind of things. You treat abscesses. You treat wounds. So treatment is a major part of a veterinarian working at a place like this. This is another picture where we are doing. So this is, of course, I thought that you might find this interesting. So this is a sloth bear, and we are doing a dental surgery on this sloth bear. It will take me a couple of minutes to explain why we do this. So the sloth bears we get are the dancing sloth bears, or who used to dance with the Madarids on the streets, and the Madarids break their teeth. And what we found with those bears is, because the teeth are broken, especially the canines are broken with very crude methods, there are a lot of abnormal cracks and a lot of dental issues that develop in those bears. So we started doing dental surgeries. We were trained by a team that came from UK, which included a human dentist as well as a veterinary dentist. And since many years, almost for a decade now, we have been doing dental surgeries. But also these kind of things that you can learn when you're working with wildlife. And probably I had never thought of doing a dental surgery on a wild animal, but now I've been involved in dental operations on bears and tigers and leopards, which is quite interesting, very thrilling for me at least, very interesting to do. Health management protocols, like with pets or like with livestock, of course, where I work at the bear facility, we have 170 rescued dancing sloth bears, and we have 24 elephants that we take care of. And of course, when you have that large population, you have to take care of these things such as routine deworming, routine vaccination, routine weighing. Weighing is a very important part of routine health management protocols, and you have to keep records of all of this. Because many vets, when they come into wildlife field, they only think of the treatments and hands-on work with the animals. But record keeping is a very, very, very important part of a wildlife vet's career, because, and especially with working with wildlife, because wildlife can be very all people are watching you, all people are listening about you, they're reading about you. So it's very important to keep records, and you get very interesting records. You can publish papers on them later, because in wildlife you get many, many interesting cases. So keeping records is very important. Taking care of these protocols is also very important, and again, a very important part of wildlife career for a vet. Diagnostics, this is just one picture for an example where my colleagues are taking an X-ray of a joint in an elephant. And we do get elephants with a lot of joint problems with severe arthritis. But of course, that's not the only diagnostic tool. You, like with any other animal, you do routine blood checkups, you do radiography, you do ultrasound. You can do. We have a thermal camera, so we also do a lot of diagnostics with the thermal camera to see if there's any inflammation happening. Because sometimes you would see an animal limping, for a case, for example, an elephant, but you wouldn't see anything externally. So in those times, the thermal camera helps a lot to see if there is any inflammation that is happening there. And from my experience, and anyone who is working in wildlife field will tell you that, a vet especially, that wild animals really mask their symptoms. Still, it's very, very severe. I don't know if that's common with the livestock and the pets. I've been working with wildlife all my career. But yeah, I can definitely tell you that in case of wild animals, you will see the symptoms, or the animals will start showing any symptoms when the condition is really severe. So this kind of diagnostics, even if we don't see anything, this kind of diagnostics, such as routine X-rays and thermal images, will help you to find something or to see something before the animal starts showing symptoms of it. So diagnostic is, of course, a very important part of wildlife vet career. Hand rearing. So that's all about the that we see every day, that we talk about all the time when we do our BVSC or MVSC. We talk about treatments and all those things that I spoke about. But being a vet, you do all sorts of things, especially in wildlife, and it's very thrilling, very interesting to do that. So this is a picture of the sloth bear cubs that we got. So this is the condition they came to us from forest department. They were in a basket, and they were not even a month old cubs. And so we had to take care of them from the start, from nutrition, their vaccinations, and their feed, their antibiotics, giving them antibiotics, and the vitamins and minerals and that sort of thing. And I remember when I was, this picture is from probably 10 years back, and I had these cubs with me in my room where I was staying, because I really loved taking care of them. And of course, that was part of the vet's job, but I really loved what I do. So these cubs were in my room, and I used to, every 2 hours, I used to give them the milk formula, and it was a lot of fun for me to do that. And I saw them growing in front of me. They were in my room for almost a month, I guess. So that's something you can be involved in, and you are, of course, expected to be involved in, but you can go an extra, you can take an extra step, and do much more if you want to. But you get to hand rear. Well, we have hand rear, of course, the sloth bears, but we have hand reared the parakeets. We have hand reared the mongoose baby. We have hand reared a hyena baby. We have hand reared peacock, a small peacock baby. So that is something that when you are working in wildlife, that is something that you come across quite frequently. Nutrition, a major part. Again, working with wildlife, you come across such a variety of animals, everything from snakes to birds to bats. I remember a colleague who received the babies of bats, and she didn't know what to do with them. And so she had to contact the experts in bats, and she used to bring the bat babies to the office, and she would give them the milk and all that for a couple of months. So when you're working with such unique animals, for example, we had pangolin, and we didn't know what to feed the pangolin when the pangolin was with us, and we figured out something. So nutrition is a very important part, and you can go so wrong with nutrition. So it's very important that you read a lot about, when you receive an animal, especially a young one. It's very important that you contact the experts. And that's another thing I love about wildlife. It's cool. It's okay to say that I don't know, because wildlife is such a vast field. You practically cannot know everything in wildlife field. So it's okay to say, and we all accept, in our community, in our circle, we all are okay with saying I don't know and I need your help. So we always be in touch. I always contact other wildlife vets, and I ask about this specific thing, nutrition, what we can feed a particular bird or an animal, or especially a young one. So that is also very important. And as I was saying, you can go so wrong with the nutrition, and especially when you're working with large populations such as the sloths that we have. It's very important to take care of the nutrition, because you will see if you are going wrong with the nutrition, you will see the effect after a few months or even years, that and then you realize that you have done something wrong with the nutrition. This particular picture of the is of the porridge that we feed the sloth bears, and you see in one particular plate you see some small amount of milk, and that's because we know that one particular bear doesn't eat porridge if we don't give her the milk. So that's also very important. Working with wild captive wild animals, you have to know the likes and dislikes of individual animals as well. Enclosure design. Now, this is something that, of course, you have to take a lot of help from your colleagues, non-vet colleagues. But why the veterinarian has to be involved in? Because it's eventually the vet who is responsible for the health of the animal, and it's eventually the vet who's going to do almost all of hands-on work with the animal. So you need to have the enclosure that will be comfortable for the not only for the animal but also for the vets, and that's what that gets, I think, neglected many times when the enclosures are being designed. So if there is a vet involved in the process of designing an enclosure, the vet can, if the vet has a say, the vet can tell, well, I need the animal to come in this corner for the treatment every day, if it's an enclosure like this where the animal roams free. So you see those shades, and in all these enclosures we have what we call ERD, elephant descending device, because we know that we need to treat elephant every day. So we tell our people where we want that ERD, elephant descending device, because it has to be very comfortable for the vets, me and my colleagues, to stand for, because some elephant abscess treatments might take half an hour, and we need to be comfortable while doing that. We need to be safe as well while we do that. So it's very important. I feel from my experience, I feel that it's very important that vets do take interest in enclosure designing of wild animals, because if you're not involved, and if you're going to work with that animal, you're going to face difficulties later if the enclosure doesn't is not comfortable for you. Animal training. So again, this is a very important part that I don't know if vets realize, especially in case of wildlife, that they will be involved in, and they should get involved in, because in previous case where we talk about when I spoke about the enclosure designing, this is also a field where you need, like for this example, we need the elephant to get the foot out for. So we are giving a laser treatment for a toenail abscess here, but you also need to do, let's say, blood collection for an elephant, and or even in case of bears, we need to do regular blood collection, and every time we need 5 ml of blood. It's very cumbersome to tranquilize a bear. It takes half a day from the bear's time as well as our vet's time, just to take 10 ml of blood from a bear. So it's very important that you get involved in the animal training, and you let keepers know, like this, the other person on the right is a keeper of that particular elephant. So you tell the keepers what you need the animal to be trained for: blood collection, mouth opening. If you need to check the teeth, you need to let the keeper know. And in some cases, you have to show the keeper what exactly you need. And it helps a lot if you yourself are involved in this process, especially in case of wildlife again. Now I'll come to free-ranging wildlife. So that's all about the captive wildlife, and we can talk about it more if you have any questions, if you are interested in anything particular that you want to talk about. When we come to free-ranging wildlife, it's mostly the rescues that we are involved in a lot. Translocations, of course, when there are animals being translocated from, let's say, tigers or deers, herd of deer, or most of the times you might be also involved in conservation and research projects that I'll talk about in a while. So talking about rescues, we rescue all sorts of animals, and I'm pretty sure you have heard of, or even urban wildlife, let's say, such as birds and snakes, monitor lizards, all those kind of things. So being a vet, you are called many times to, especially in case of mammals or dangerous animals like this, like leopard or tigers, or even crocodiles, that sort of thing. So as a vet, you are called to tranquilize an animal. So you have to be really confident. You have to be well versed with the tranquilizing equipment, such as blowpipe, dart gun. And another very important aspect is you have to be well versed with sedatives that you can use in different animals, the doses in different animals, and what can go wrong. Like, for example, in large cats, they're very prone to getting seizures with ketamine. So you have to know that, and you have to know what you are going to do if you see a leopard or a tiger getting seizures with ketamine, and you have to have that kit ready with you. So when you know all that, you will be ready with all the medicine that you need. uh, and of course, if it's a reptile or a bird, you have to, reptiles are all a different game altogether. So as I said before, wildlife is a very, very vast field, and if you're not confident, always talk to someone who has experience. I still speak to, because in case of leopards, I have a colleague who's much more experienced than me in leopards. So if I'm called for any leopard rescue, I always call a colleague of mine, and I discuss with him the situation of the leopard, and I talk to him about what I can do, even without tranquilizing the elephant. If you can do a rescue without tranquilizing an elephant, a leopard. So this is my colleague, Dr. Ilaraja, who had to. So this is again very interesting case. So they put a net on the well where the leopard was fallen, and he darted with the blowpipe. Now he could have used a gun as well, but again, it depends on the situation, how deep the well was, if the well had water in it or not, and if it was the range was comfortable for the blowpipe or a gun, and all those sort of things. But he chose to use the blowpipe, and he darted the leopard, and leopard was rescued and released in the natural habitat after that. So that's one thing. And this is our hospital. This is the photo of our hospital. These are two of my colleagues, Dr. Ilaja, who you just saw in the last picture, who was darting the leopard, and that's my another colleague, Dr. Preetham. Being an only wildlife hospital in the area, in whole of UP actually, we get lot of rescued birds and animals. So this is an all that just an example. We also get snakes and deers, hyenas, leopards, all sorts of animals. So those are the animals you always work with. We get many rescue calls. We have a separate rescue team, and they keep bringing all those animals and birds to us. And as a vet, it's of course our duty and a part of our job to deal with those animals. This is different hyena. So this hyena was in a conflict situation. I'm sorry for a gory picture. This can be a little stressful to see this particular picture, but you of course have to deal with such cases, especially in case of wildlife, because in many times when they get into conflict, when they go approach the villages, when they get into conflict with the people of course hit them with the sticks and stones or whatever they can, and you might end up having an animal in really bad shape like this. We have had hyenas whose eye had been gouged out. We have had a porcupine who had a hit on the head with a stick, and had a concussion and had nervous problems. We've had pythons who had fractures in the vertebral bones. So all these sort of things you have to deal with, and especially in case of wildlife, you might come across such gory cases. And in case of conflict situations, or when you're dealing with the animals that have come from the wild, you're generally dealing with an animal which was probably found after a couple of days, or which was troubled by people for a long period. And most of those animals, unfortunately, a lot of them pass away, so you have to deal with that as well. You have to be mentally prepared that the animal may not survive whatever you do. You generally deal with this kind of animal. Most of the animals who come from conflict situations like this are in really bad shape. You can just do your best, but again, you have to really know the animal, and what you can do, what you can give, or what you cannot give. For an example, I will just give you an example. So ivermectin, it's very common in veterinary practice, but it's contraindicated. It's actually toxic in tortoises, like the turtles and tortoises, so you cannot give that. So you have to really know what you're giving to the animal. If you're not sure, you of course have to read, and you have to keep yourself updated with that sort of thing. So that was the rescue. This is another part. When you're this now, I'm coming to the conservation and research project part. So this is an wild elephant in Chhattisgarh that we radio collared. And this is actually a research come conservation project. This is a herd of elephant in Chhattisgarh, which tends to get in conflict with people very frequently. And so we proposed to the government, and we worked with the government authorities in radio collaring the matriarch, which is basically the leader of the elephant herd. We radio collared herd, and so we can monitor the movements of the herd. And because we observed that a lot of people were very angry with the elephants and they wanted to harm the elephants. So what we proposed was, if we know the movement of the elephant herd, we can let the villagers know in advance that the herd is moving towards the village, so they wouldn't be surprised, and they can start working on shooing the elephant herd away, or we can start working on with them in shooing the elephants away, and we can take some measures. But again, this is of course a very dangerous, very thrilling, but very dangerous operation. But this sort of thing you can be involved in. I've been involved in with some leopard collaring projects, which was a research project. In fact, a researcher was studying leopard ecology, and she needed help with darting the leopards and putting radio collars on them. So it's all basically conservation come research. Like in case of this particular elephant project, we are monitoring their movements, which is giving us a lot of data, and we are learning new things about the elephants. Or in Karnataka, we have a project where we are putting the camera traps, and we had put on a radio collar on a wild bear that we rescued, and we were able to monitor movements. So it's all generally conservation come research projects. You get good amount of data, and you come to know so much about wild animals from this sort of projects. And as a vet, you're always part of the team. The vet is of course required to tranquilize the animal here to make sure that the animal is doing okay during the anesthesia procedure. So a vet has to, for example, keep looking at the signs that the anesthesia is fading off. The vet has to keep monitoring the body temperature. The vet has to keep monitoring the pulse rate. And if, of course, the animal is waking up, the vet has to either give, a top up, or what we call top up, a more dose of a tranquilizer, or tell the team that we need to back off and the animal is waking up. But a vet is a very, very important and integral part of the such teams, the research teams. This is another example where we were repatriating, or basically, these were the star tortoises that were rescued from an anti-poaching operations, and in fact, they were caught at Singapore airport. They were being illegally poached to other countries through Singapore, and this was the last batch of few hundred star tortoises that were rescued, and they were in Singapore for a while. So our team went to Singapore, brought them back, and now we are basically trying to reintroduce them to their natural habitat. But before that, we have to make sure that the tortoises are comfortable with the habitat that we are planning to release them in. So my colleague, my senior Dr. Arun, he is going to he's basically putting some gum to put a radio transmitter. And of course, when we do that, we collect blood. We make sure that the tortoises, or rather any wild animal, is doing good, is fit to go back to the wild. So this is the whole process. It's just one picture from the process, but this process basically involves collecting blood samples, doing all the health screening, and then putting the radio transmitters and releasing them. And of course, there's another colleague of ours who's monitoring the movement. But if you're interested, you can of course learn how to track or how to use the radio telemetry and follow up on that. And of course, necropsis, being a vet, you're always expected. We always get called for necropsis of different animals, including gharial. Like this is a gharial hatchling that I'm doing a necropsy on. But you can be many times you get called for necropsis of wild animals, including elephants and leopards and tigers, anything, civet cats, all sorts of animals. But again, you have to know. If you don't know, you have to read before you go to the field. Just read about the anatomy of the animal. Like reptiles like gharials can have a very, very unique anatomy, and we are not used to it. We are used to the mammals generally, but reptiles and specifically crocodilians have very different anatomy, and you need to know what's normal and not normal for them. And you have to read, of course, because you keep yourself updated. But that's the whole fun of being a wildlife vet. You learn so much every day when you're working in the field of wildlife conservation and medicine. Uh, yeah, that's all. So as I said, the scope and possibilities in wildlife are limitless. You can do lots of things. You can be involved in research, like they mentioned in introduction. I've been involved with reproductive physiology and behavior of sloth bears, and I learned so much about. I was working as a vet with sloth bears since 2009, and I started my PhD in 2014, and I actually started my actual research work in 2015. And I have learned so much new stuff about sloth bears that I was not able to learn, working just as a vet. As a researcher, when I started analyzing the samples, when I started doing the statistical analysis, I found so much new information about the sloth bears. So you can always, you know, go into research, and wildlife research is fascinating. You learn so much, and there's so much to do in wildlife research. There's nothing very less known about wildlife in general compared to, let's say, pets or livestock. So yeah, so if you're interested, there is limitless possibilities in the field, and if you are interested in getting into wildlife and or being a wildlife vet when you're out in the field, you're welcome to contact me anytime. You can get my email ID, or you can message me now, and I can give my email ID or phone number, and you're most welcome to contact me for any help you need. So that's all from my side, and over to you guys. If you, I hope that was not very long.
No, sir. Thank you
No,
so much.
sir.
Okay.
That was a great session, and we have a lot of questions popping up. So let's
Okay.
get started with that.
Sure.
So Parul
Okay.
asks, why is arthritis common in elephants?
Right. So arthritis is very common in captive elephant mostly, and that too in what we call begging elephants. So I don't know if you know enough about begging elephants. Are basically the elephants that walk on the streets, that get booked for weddings and that sort of thing. And the arthritis is very common in those elephants or circus elephants, is because they are kept on hard surfaces and they walk on hard surfaces all the time, most of their life, such as tar roads. And when they're not walking, they are restrained on concrete surfaces most of the time. And those kind of surfaces, like tar road and concrete, are totally unnatural and unhealthy for the elephants. And especially when they're restrained, they cannot move a lot as well, and that puts a lot of stress on the joints. If you imagine an elephant in Asian elephants, the generally weight in adult elephants is about, let's say, 3 to 4.5 tons. So if you consider that much weight on those joints and standing on hard surfaces whole of your life, that's what causes arthritis. Okay.
So Vaishali
Um,
asks,
yeah.
can you tell us exactly how to enter the field of wildlife?
So yeah, so there are many ways you can do. Of course, if you're still doing your BBSc, you can do MBSc. There are 2 or 3 colleges in India now. I know Chennai and Jabalpur colleges for sure have masters in wildlife medicine, and you can also do wildlife biology course, because I know vets who have done wildlife biology course because they wanted to learn more about, let's say, wildlife ecology and behavior. Because being a vet, you of course know the medicine part of it. You just need to learn about specific species, when you're dealing with them. But I think being in wildlife field, it's very important to know other things such as ecology and biology of particular species that you're going to work with. So Wildlife Institute of India in Dehradun has very good course. NCBS, National Center for Biological Sciences in Bangalore, have very good course. And there are a lot of vets I know who have gone through those courses. Although it's not a course specific for the vets, but if you're interested in learning other things, you can do that. And if you don't do any of this, just probably start with volunteering or apply to the places where they work with wildlife, and that's one of the ways to get into wildlife.
Rashi is asking, what diseases do you commonly get to see in animals you work with?
Okay, so I mostly work with bears and elephants. In elephants, well, infectious diseases, we haven't had any infectious diseases so far, thankfully. But in elephants, I know that tuberculosis is very common. Then FMD, we have got cases of, not at our center, but there have been cases of FMD, foot and mouth disease in elephants. EHV is very common, which is a huge concern. Elephant herpes virus, basically. In elephant community, it's a huge concern, not only in India, in international level, and there have been workshops and conferences only on elephant herpes virus. So it's kind of a emerging wildlife disease in elephants. And in case of bears, we have seen canine hepatitis initially. We have seen some cases of rabies. So, but now we vaccinated for many years now. We have been vaccinating the bears. Tuberculosis is especially with the population that we work. These are all the rescue dancing bears, and some of them do get tuberculosis from their dancing left from people. So that's one of the common infectious diseases that we have seen with the bears.
Um, Vaishali asks, how often are you faced with life-threatening situations?
Surprisingly, very rarely, because well, it depends on what you consider as a life threatening. An elephant charging on you for a third person watching it can be life threatening, and it is life threatening. But when you're a wildlife vet, when you have some experience, some training, you know what you're doing, and if you are smart enough to avoid such kind of situations, it is risky. Of course, working in wildlife is risky. There are unfortunate incidences of vets getting killed by wild animals, but that's something that that is involved, and you take care that you try to be safe as much as you can. And as I said, it's a situation with life threatening is very rare, I would say. But yeah, we have all gone through the vets who work in wildlife field have all gone through some kind of uh, tricky situation. Although I don't know if it was life threatening or not, but we can just call it a tricky situation. But you just have to be smart enough and be safe.
Yash Maikar asks, how does one treat fractures in pythons?
Yeah, so it depends on what kind of fracture we are dealing with. So, and it's very very difficult, to be frank, with snakes, because they move so much. And another problem with plastering on all is they shed the skin, so that's another issue. So what you can do is you can put a simple bandage. This is something you can try. You can put a bandage, and you can restrict the movement of that particular part where you saw the fracture. But of course, if you see the snake shedding, you have to change the bandage. You have to handle the snake and change the bandage. And yeah, so the key is to restrict the movement of that particular part with some sort of splints in the bandage. But if it's a head fracture, that's kind of difficult. It's head or a jaw fracture, that's difficult.
Nikunj Sule asks, which is the one of the most rare endangered wild animal you have worked with?
I have worked with gharials, which are quite endangered, and which was very interesting because reptiles. That's my reptiles and elephants are my that's where my heart lies. So and I work with. So we caught few gharials. That was a research conservation research project, and I was part of the team as a vet just to make sure that nothing happens to the gharials. But we basically caught 10 gharials from a river, and we put radio transmitters on them. So that was a really interesting experience for me. So that's one animal, and another animal is a slow loris, which you don't find very. That's not very common to have a slow loris. And I don't know what it's a primate basically, which you find in Northeast India. And I was in Arunachal then, Arunachal Pradesh, and I had this slow. So this particular animal was caught illegally by a family, and they were keeping him as a pet. And some other animal activists in the area rescued the loris, brought to me, and the animal was under my care for about a month. So yeah, so those are that I can immediately remember.
Okay.
Shardul asks, how to tackle capture myopathy in rescued animals, because there are incidences that animals seem to be recovered completely but suddenly die after a week or so due to the capture myopathy.
Yeah, capture myopathy unfortunately is very common in deers. So I think the key is to keep the minimum stress, and probably in case of deers who are very very notorious for getting capture myopathy, I think tranquilizing the animal helps a lot, instead of trying to hurt the animal. Of course, but it depends totally on the situation. If it's a big herd, and if you're successful in driving one animal to particular in a particular direction, generally rest of the animals follow. Capture myopathy generally happens when we are trying to corner an individual animal, or it's very hot, the weather. So I'm talking in particular case of deers because that's the animal, any sort of deer that generally gets captured myopathy. So I think the key is to work with a herd instead of individual animals. And if you're dealing with an individual, tranquilization probably is the preferable method.
Okay.
Hmm, okay. Okay.
Neil, your mic.
Yeah, you're on mute.
Okay. So
Sorry.
I see the question here. So which vein is
Sorry.
preferred for blood collection in bears and elephants? So in bears, it's a jugular vein that we prefer for blood collection. And site for mic. So procedure is the similar. So site for microchipping in elephants is behind the left ear. That's the most common site. And procedure is similar to any other animal. We have the gun, the microchip gun, and the microchip, and you insert it subcutaneous and deliver the microchip under the skin. So it's the procedure is like any other animal. And commonly encountered injuries, diseases in sloth bears. So commonly encountered injuries in rescued sloth bears are mostly the mouth, as I said, because they used to knock off the canines. So mouth injuries are very, very common. Blindness, it's not an injury, but that's kind of a condition that we found because uh, they sometimes, and it's mostly because of the hitting. They used to hit the bears somewhere near the eye, and that damages the eye many times. Uh, yeah, I think those are the most common injuries and diseases. As I said, tuberculosis is a very common infectious disease in the rescued sloth bears. That especially the dancing sloth bears.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, I forgot to mention about the blood collection site for elephants. For elephants is
Yeah.
the ear vein, yeah, behind the ear. So elephants have this really nice network of blood vessels behind their ears. And only trick is you have both the arteries and veins, and the trick is to find the vein and not the artery, because in elephants the blood pressure is so much. If you puncture an artery, even if you're putting an IV, the blood goes up into the bottle with the pressure. Any vaccination prophylaxis is followed in sloth bears. Preferred anesthetic. Okay, so vaccination we do 7-in-1 that is used in dogs, but we are particularly interested in for the sloth bears. We are particularly interested in the rabies, anti-rabies vaccination, and the canine adenovirus, ICH basically, that we vaccinate them against. But since those particular vaccines are kind of difficult to get, so we just get the combined vaccine, the rabies plus the rest of the the one we use in dogs, and we vaccinate sloth bears with that. Uh, and preferred anesthetic, xylazine and ketamine. In wildlife, xylazine and ketamine works well, not wonderfully, but unfortunately, those are the very two common and anesthetics available in India. We
Same.
have used metomidine. We have used propofol for the maintenance after tranquilizing the sloth bear, but for induction, it's just xylazine and ketamine, and it works well with sloth bears.
Kalyani.
Kalyani asks that it isn't such a glorifying field to enter for a career. Can you
Yeah.
tell us the work?
So the work profile is what I spoke about in my presentation. That's basically what you do being a wildlife vet. Glorifying career, it depends. I mean, it depends on what your goal is. If you are interested in doing something, let's say interesting, that will interest you, or that will contribute into the wildlife conservation, and that's, I think, my suggestion to any vet that is thinking about wildlife field is come in this field only if you have interest, if you have genuine interest in working with wild animals. If you are interested, let's say, in a government job or being into pet field, that's fine, completely fine. But in the wildlife field, we really need vets who are genuinely interested in keep working, because especially when you enter a wildlife field, it takes 6 months just to learn everything about wildlife, and you have to kind of unlearn a lot of things that you have learned during your regular training. And because even the handling wildlife, the approach is very different than pets, and you have to get versed with dart guns and blowpipe, and how to handle different animals. You need to learn how to handle a bird. You need to learn how to handle a snake. If you need to learn where you can stand, near an elephant, and where you cannot stand near an elephant. So all those kind of things you need to learn. I love wildlife field, and I know many people who love wildlife field. And in talking about whether it's glorifying or not, I think it is glorifying because there's a lot of attention in wildlife field now. You should watch the Nat Geo series that recently came on, and we all were featured in that. So that's kind of a glorification. I think we were featured on Nat Geo, so that's kind of, I think that's glorification of what we do. So, but we have been doing big. We came on Nat Geo when we have been in this field for 10, 12, 15 years. Some of my colleagues are working for 18 years in this field. So, of course, it's a glorifying field, but you have to put some effort, of course.
Yeah.
So Vaishali asks,
Okay.
are there any courses for specialization in wild animals after UG in India?
Yes. So in Chennai Veterinary College in Tanuas, you have a master's in wildlife medicine, and when you're doing your masters, you can choose for your thesis or for your master's thesis work. You can choose what you're interested in. Like people choose, some of them choose snakes, some of them choose elephants, some of them choose tigers. So it depends on you. But yes, that's one thing you can do. And another college that has good master course is Jabalpur Veterinary College. And they have a very good, actually, Jabalpur Veterinary College has a very good pathology diagnostic lab as well, specifically for wildlife. And they have really good lab setup there. So if you're interested in, wildlife disease pathology, that's a place you should look to.
Could you give, sorry, Meghna is asking, could you give an idea of the things covered under the course of wildlife medicine?
I'm not sure because I didn't do that course. I did something called conservation medicine. But as I said, I think they would. I'm really not sure. I mean, I cannot answer that question in detail. I can ask someone and then get back to you if
Yeah.
you want. Who has done that course. But I haven't gone through. I myself haven't gone through that course. I did
We
something else.
can, yeah, we can get Meghna in contact with a few like
Yeah,
seniors who have done the course.
yeah. That would be
Yeah.
better.
Yeah.
Meghna also asks, any advice or tips for a student who plans on taking up wildlife medicine?
Yes, first advice is think about it if you are genuinely interested in wildlife because it's a very different field compared to what we learn during BBSA, which is mostly the livestock and the pets. It can be a little taxing sometimes, especially if you're working with free-ranging animals. And I would say if you're interested in the wildlife, start volunteering at some place the that let's say for example if you're in Mumbai, start contacting people in Mumbai Zoo and see if you can start volunteering there, so you'll get a feel of what is expected of you, and you will know whether you want to continue or not. So I think the first thing for you to do would be to start working or start volunteering at a place that deals with wildlife, some rescue center, a zoo, and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
Nord asks, what are the main steps for preventing capture myopathy in field conditions?
Yeah, as I said,
Yeah,
try to deal with the herd instead of an individual animal. And if you have to deal with an individual animal, prefer the anesthesia instead of making the animal run around.
Arjun is asking, hello, he's saying hello to you, sir. How do enrichments play a big role in captive wild animals?
Oh, very good question. Hi, Arjun. I know him. We have met before. So, So enrichment, of course, I forgot to talk about enrichment. I don't know what everyone knows what enrichment is. So enrichment is basically anything, because when you have captive wild animals in captivity, such as an elephant or bear or anything, leopard or a tiger, these animals have particular instincts, being wild, and when they're in captivity, if those instincts are not fulfilled or those behaviors are not fulfilled, they develop stress, and because of the stress, they develop abnormal behavior which can be damaging to their health. And there are few very common typical abnormal behaviors such as pacing and swaying and different kind of things. In the case of elephants, is head bobbing. So the whole purpose of enrichment is to encourage those or satisfy those natural instincts of the animal. For example, for elephants, they browse a lot when they're in the wild. They reach out to the branches high up. So when you're dealing with elephants, you have to hang something on the top so that elephant can reach out, and that also gives them a good exercise because elephant walk a lot. They walk hundreds of kilometers during the day, and it's very important. Like horses, for elephants, it's very important to get enough exercise. So you have to design your enrichment so that they get enough exercise. In case of bears, you have to give something for them to browse. In case of sloth bears, they dig a lot because they eat lots of ants and termites. So you have to give them something that you have to dig. So enrichment basically play a very major role in psychological health of the animal, and when that psychological health is taken care of, that kind of takes care of the physical health as well. So in case of captive wild animals, that's a very, very good question actually, and that's something I think I forgot to mention in my presentation. So being a vet, you have to of course be a part of the enrichment routine or enrichment protocol of the animals, because you are responsible for not only physical health but also the psychological health of the animal.
Bhuri Singh asks, which anesthetic preparation is used in wildlife, mainly in the elephants?
So in elephants, we mostly use xylazine. So xylazine causes standing sedation in elephants. Sometimes you may or may not need ketamine. So xylazine works wonderfully if you need the elephant standing. Otherwise, etorphin. Only problem with etorphin is the elephant lies down, and etorphin, first of all, is very dangerous to be working with. You have to be very, very careful working with etorphin. And the elephant lies down, and for a heavy animal like elephant, lying down for long period can become problematic. But of course, thankfully, there's a reversal for etorphin. So depends on what you want to do. You can either go with xylazine or etorphin.
Vaishali asks, do you face any resistance or sticky situations from the locals when introducing elephants to your farm?
What is the common notion? Yeah, many
Yeah.
times. Yes, many times we do face some resistance from people, especially when, let's say, a person has been mauled by the animal, or livestock has been killed. Let's say a goat or a cow has been killed by an animal because they want to take revenge, which is natural tendency, especially the herd, the mob tendency to take revenge. So we have faced situation many times that we reach there to rescue an animal or to dart an animal and take it away, and then we were stopped by villagers who kind of wanted to kill the animal. So that's a very tricky situation. Sometimes if you find someone sensible in the crowd, you have to work with the crowd yourself, or many times unfortunately you have to take help from the police to for the crowd control. And sometimes actually it's not even curiosity. Curiosity is a big, because I remember, I'm sorry, curiosity is also a big problem, because I remember a situation where I had gone on this rescue, and there was a dry well and there was a hyena into the well, inside the well, and there was no wall, so it was an open well, and people had already thrown stones and stuff on the hyena, so the hyena was very angry, and we were trying to walk around the well, and we had this huge ground around us, and if anyone, and they all wanted to peek into the well, so anything could have happened to us. So finally we had to back off. We had to wait for a couple of us till the police arrived. So the police formed kind of a ring around us, and then we could do what we wanted to. So yeah, it can be quite tricky, even dangerous for a vet and the team sometimes.
Meghna asks, Sir, are there any associations in Mumbai that teach snake handling and rescuing?
That's a tricky question because I don't know if there is like I don't know if anyone can. And I'm being frank, officially train anyone to, handle snakes because I think Maharashtra Forest Department has started this license system that you get an ID saying you are a snake rescuer. So, as I said before, as an answer to someone's question, I think you have to start volunteering with an organization. There are the organization I know well in Mumbai is Raw Rescue. It's something Pawan Sharma. I don't know. Some of you might know his name. Pawan Sharma. Or, if you're talking about a vet, Reena Dev. She's from Bombay Vet and she has a clinic. So she deals with a lot of wild animals. Specifically, she's great with birds. So, and she works with Raw very closely. Raw brings a lot of rescued animals to her. So, if anyone is interested, they can approach Reena, and she can guide you. But I think yeah, you just start working with a group who rescues snakes. You tag along with them when they go on snake rescues, and you slowly learn handling and rescuing. But there is no course as such in snake handling and rescuing. I think you first have to start recognizing the snakes. That's something that you start with. Snake species, I mean.
Sid asks, have you encountered any epidemic of a disease? What is the line of action in times like that?
No, I haven't encountered, but I know a lot of people. So there was a case of elephant herpes virus, which I mentioned before, in one of the zoos in India, and they lost, I think, 4 or 5 calves, elephant calves, to that. So and not in well, there's another case. I don't want to mention the details, but there was another case of toxicity in black bucks a few years back. It was not an infectious disease, but there was a toxicity. Recently, there was die-off at I think it was in Rajasthan, Pushkar, I guess, in birds. I don't know if you've heard of it. So that was an infectious disease. So I think the case is to necropsies are very important. So whatever animals have unfortunately died, but that's a great opportunity to see what is happening. So you be very careful when you're doing the necropsy. Collect all the samples that you can. Get in touch with experts such as with IVRI and ask them what samples can be collected in what, because if you're if it's a viral infection, you need to send it on ice or some solution that the formalin won't work. So those kind of things you need to know. If you have any live animals that are showing symptoms, isolating them, of course, like in case of any other animal like livestock, isolating them and starting the treatment is the key. But I think in case of an epidemic, the part that is neglected is mostly the necropsy, which is really, really important, because if you have one, you can learn so much from a dead carcass. And if you collect the samples properly and if you do it as quickly as possible, so you can save, if you have, let's say, 3 dead animals, but you do really good necropsies, you can save maybe 40 or 50 more from that.
Okay. Um,
Yes.
this person has question: are there any opportunities for volunteering internship at Wildlife SOS?
Yes. We do have volunteer.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Could you share some light over how he could gain those opportunities?
Yeah. So we do have a volunteer program, which is, considering the situation, which is currently on hold. We are not taking any volunteers right now, and hopefully the situation gets better and we'll start. But yeah, we do have a regular. We get volunteers all the time. I think you can email on volunteer@wildlifesos.org. And we actually have a specific, because we were getting a lot of inquiries from the vets to do vet volunteering specifically. So we have kind of developed a separate program for the vets, for the for the veterinary students, or even the vets who are already in the field. So when you email us, if you're a vet or if you're a vet student, mention that you're interested in the vet volunteer program, and we'll see what we can do. So yeah, volunteer@wildlifeassist.org. That's the email ID. Oh God.
Asks how to manage lactic acid stress in crocodiles while physical handling if ever needed. And
Yeah.
second question, microchipping sites in crocodiles for conservation.
So I haven't come across or haven't heard of. If you have, let me know. But I haven't heard of lactic acid problem, and the crocodiles are quite sturdy, and there are not many complications as such if, when you're handling them. Only issue is for the handler actually, because you have to be really safe when you're handling the crocodiles. But I haven't come across many problems while handling the crocs. Microchipping site I think is on the at the tail base, but I'll have to confirm because we didn't microchip the crocodiles. But I think it's on the tail base for the crocs, dorsally on the tail base.
Kanchan asks, is
Why?
there
Okay.
any wildlife learning center in Marathwada?
I don't know if there's any wildlife. There are two veterinary colleges, of course, in Marathwada. There is Zoo, Aurangabad Zoo, if you want to start there. I don't know where are you from in Marathwada, but in my internship, I actually started with snakes, and I decided to start with wildlife when I was doing my internship. And we had internship at Aurangabad Zoo. Some of our part was at Aurangabad Zoo, and that's where I just got hold of the caretaker for the reptiles and started working with them. And I just started spending time with him, and I started learning about snakes, and that's how I think it started. I don't know if there are specific wildlife learning centers in Marathwada. Uh, Probably you just have to start at the zoo. You can get in touch with the vet probably at the zoo.
Nikunj asks, best tip you would give for of being wary if someone were to work with element. I don't understand.
I don't know. Yeah, uh, but probably best tip to work if someone wants to work with elephants. Uh, be ready to accept the challenge, because elephants can be challenging, can be frustrating sometimes, because I do get asked many times what's the most challenging part of being an elephant vet, and I always say just the sheer size of an elephant is the most challenging and frustrating part, because you cannot simply make an elephant do something by force. Like, if you want an elephant to lie down, like, even a cow or, a dog, you cannot just force an elephant to lie down.
Yeah.
You have to work with the elephant to lie down. So that's the most challenging and frustrating part sometimes. So you have to be patient with the elephants. And elephants are very, very clever animals. So that's why you need to be more patient with the elephants, because they know what is happening. They are very aware of what is happening. And so you just have to work with the elephant. You cannot force elephant to do something. I mean, we have an elephant, she hates taking injections, even, vaccinations. So it's a huge challenge every time for us to simply give an injection to her, a vaccinating injection. So we have to train her to accepting it. That's the only way we can give her a vaccine. We have to train her. So we are in the process of training her to accept injections, and that's going to take, a month, not a month, more than that, probably 4 months, 5 months, 6 months. So, and the elephant can easily hurt you. So, if you want to force an elephant to take an injection, she can simply, turn around and throw us somewhere. So yeah, that's the most challenging part, and that's the tip. Be patient, know that elephant know what you're doing, and you just cannot force an elephant to do something.
Um, our next question is Arjun. He asks, why is the usage of metomidine not allowed in India, sir? As you said, uh, etorphin is dangerous.
Yeah, I don't know if meritocracy. I'm not aware if meritocracy is not allowed. I think you can use meritocracy if you get it easily. Etorphin. I mean, you can use meritocracy, but in elephants, I was talking about elephants. The elephant choice of anesthesia is Zalazin and etorphin. I don't know medetomidine. I know a vet who was doing some work on using medetomidine in elephants. I have to ask her what her results were. But generally, everyone just uses xylazine and etorphin. Etorphin works wonderfully. It is dangerous, but it's very common. I mean, in India, it's very expensive and you don't get easily. But abroad, like, let's say in Africa, South Africa, and all those places, it's so rampant. It's so common. People, vets use it all the time. But I think you can use medetomidine in India.
Yeah, you do get it. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
So Vaishali asks, are there any eligibility criteria for volunteering at Wildlife SOS?
No, no. You just have to be interested. There's no eligibility criteria as such. What we ask is when someone contacts us for volunteering, we ask the interest of the person, because we also, as you can imagine, we also need vets for a lot of other work. We need, sorry, volunteers, not the vets, but we need volunteers for, to paint the enclosures, for example. We need volunteers to clean the fence. So some of the volunteers we get are interested in computer work, so we can assign them some computer work. So it totally depends on what you are interested in and how we can utilize your expertise or your interest. But there is no fixed eligibility criteria as such. Only thing probably age. I mean, unless you are too young to, because it can be risky being around wild animals. So yeah.
Yeah, that's true. Samruddhi asks, sir, can you share your email, please?
Uh,
Yeah.
yeah, I can, but I don't know how to share it right now.
We can, Samruddhi, you can contact us. We can share it with you.
Yes, you can give me your email ID and I can send it to you, Samriddhi.
Yeah.
Vaishali asks, is the job profile stable or are you called at various places all the time?
Okay, so wildlife practice involves lots of traveling, but that's again, uh, that is something I love. I've been to places that, so many interesting places because I'm a wildlife vet. In India, abroad, everywhere. But yes, if you mean stable geographically, it depends if you're in a government job in a zoo or something. Of course, that's stable. But for me personally, traveling is more fun. I love traveling and I love going to places and deal with different people and different animals. But yeah, it can involve a lot of traveling. Okay, nail reconstruction. I don't know what you
So
mean.
what is your experience with nail reconstruction?
So nail, I don't know what you mean by nail reconstruction. If you you're talking about toenail issues, so yeah, we do get, especially in captive elephants, there are lots of toenail issues, which basically are called either toenail abscesses or toenail cracks. So my experience with them is they tend to be chronic. They need months of treatment, years of treatment, and depending on the situation, it can be a lifetime treatment. It's unfortunately never gonna be normal as such. So you have to work with what you have, and you have to just make sure that it doesn't worsen and it doesn't cause discomfort. So, for example, some of our elephants are on permanent course of anti-inflammatories because it's painful for them if you don't give them anti-inflammatories. So, but yeah, some of the problems you can of course cure, but any problem with the toenail is gonna take at least few months. It's not gonna heal quickly.
We have one more question. Do you deal with poaching cases? If yes, how often? Which animals are more prone to poaching?
Yes, we do deal with poaching cases, but most of the animals we get under poaching, most of the live animals we get are mostly reptiles, like monitor lizards or snakes, the tortoise that I star tortoise. So I think in wildlife, well, all animals are, of course, and of course elephants. Elephants are, if you consider illegal transfer as poaching, that is, kind of poaching. So, unfortunately, most of the animals, such as tigers and leopards, you did generally get dead animals by the time you come to know, because of course they are not poached live; they're killed and then the body parts are poached. But the most common poached animal that we come across are reptiles. Yeah, if that answers your question.
Do you get any tortoise shell fractures and how do you tackle those?
Yeah, we have got few cases. It's not very frequent, but we have got few cases of shell fractures, and there are ways to. I don't know. It's difficult to explain right now how to deal with the fractures, but you basically can. If you have a fracture, you basically have metal strips, and you glue the metal strip as you align the fracture, and you glue the metal strip across like stitches, but you use the metal strips to keep the fracture to keep the shell intact. And the key is to not allow it to catch infection, because the shell fractures can catch infection very frequently. So you keep washing it with normal saline or Ringer's lactate frequently, and you avoid the movement. So you can glue or somehow fix those metal strips, and depending on how severe the fracture is, sometimes those fractures don't heal, sometimes they do. So yeah.
Okay.
Parul asks, how you deal with animals like wild elephants, how you control them.
So if you're talking about physical control, the only only way to do that is tranquilizing the wild elephant. Otherwise, you don't want to mess with the wild animal, a wild elephant. But that's the only way for a vet to do anything with a wild elephant. That's the only way to tranquilize, or other. I mean, I'm talking in terms of the veterinary work. But if you are a biologist, or so you just know what how the the body language of the elephants, and then you just try not to invade into their private space. Imaging techniques for elephants. Everything. So imaging techniques can involve radiograph. I mean, X-rays is very very common. We do X-rays all the time. Thermal radiography. That's something we do. Thermal imaging. I'm sorry, not thermal imaging. That's something we do. Ultrasound you do, but in case of elephants, the ultrasound is limited, because you can't do a lot. You can do maybe you can see the reproductive system if you want to, but you need to have a special training, because the reproductive system in elephants is quite different. So you need some training to understand the reproductive system when you see the images. You cannot do transabdominal, because the skin is very thick, and the problem is the ultrasound waves don't go to the depth that you need. And only thing we generally use ultrasound is with the abscesses, to see how deep the abscess is, and at what stage, if there's any healing from inside. So that's X-ray, ultrasound, and thermal imaging. Yeah.
With the new system, which allows you to get admitted in PG courses only via ICAR examination, what will be your tips for the students aspiring to secure a seat with wildlife medicine?
I don't know. I'm sorry. I don't know. I don't know what the current system has been out of
It's all
veterinary
really new.
academics for so long now.
Yeah, it's all really new, and
Yeah.
I don't know
But
which
yeah,
senior.
well, I can, if you're interested and if you get in touch with me, I can guide you to someone who's currently doing wildlife medicine either in Jabalpur or Chennai Veterinary College, and then you can ask that person.
The new rules and regulations are
I have
like
no
not
idea.
yet announced very clearly. So, is it going to be the same way? Like, we don't know exactly how it's going to happen.
I don't even know what the new rules are.
Okay.
Kanchal
Yeah.
asks, how can we
Yeah.
apply for wildlife institutions in abroad after undergraduation?
Well, you can apply like you apply to another institution. Depending on what country you're going, you have to either give GRE TOEFL or IELTS, one of them. And what I would suggest is you first fix the course, what the course you want to do, the course and the institution, the university, and then depending on which country it is in, you can either go for GRE TOEFL or IELTS. But yeah, that's
Yeah.
like for any other course.
Yeah, like every university and course that you look for has different requirements.
Yeah.
So you need to shortlist out what universities you want to go to and what courses you want to apply for. So you have to see what requirements, and then when are their opening dates. So like you cannot miss if it's always 1 year before. So this year you will apply for the next year. So you have to be really up to date. And yeah.
Yeah.
I would like to add something to this question. So, if we are planning upon practicing in India, would it be suggestible to take take up your PG course abroad, return to India and then practice, or just continue your PG in India and then, I mean, is the syllabus different? It is obviously different, but what would you suggest?
Well, if you want to continue, if you want to come back, continue working in India, I would say probably prefer the Indian institution, because one thing, of course, financially, it's easier to work in India, because if you go abroad and if you anyone want to return to India, you have that education loan and all that practical thinking. And another thing is, when you study abroad, the exposure you will get is to mostly the wildlife in that particular country. But if you are in India, you will know the kind of wildlife scene in India, and you'll be ready when you get into the field. I mean, you'll have some idea of what is going on in the wildlife circles in India. But if you are coming from abroad, it's kind of a very new. You don't. You have to make contacts, and you have to kind of start from the scratch.
Um, okay. Vaishali asked, are there any interesting gynecological study cases in elephants that you have come across?
No, I haven't come across any interesting gynecological cases, but I know that the female elephants that are not bred for any reason, they are, for some reason, they are more prone to leiomyomas, like the tumors in the reproductive system. And that's something that people are working on. No one knows why it's that. Actually, the zookeepers in US, some of the zoos I've been to US, they have specifically started training their elephants to accept the ultrasound examinations rectally, because they want to keep checking if the elephant gets any tumors in the let's say uterus or something. But yeah, that's the only gynecological problem I can think of right now.
Okay.
I
Okay.
think
I
those
think,
are all the questions.
yeah, Ruchi, thank you.
Yeah.
Yes, that was an amazing session of question
So
answer
I have
round.
one question.
Oh, sure.
Okay.
Sir, share something about your National Geographic experience.
You mean about the shooting? About the experience? You mean the shooting? About how was the shooting and all that?
I think he does mean that.
Okay,
Yeah,
yeah. It was
everything,
fascinating. I
everything
mean,
with the National Geographic related.
yeah, it was fascinating. I mean, to have people as professional as National Geographic level working with you, that was quite incredible. And the shooting was done last year actually, and they were with us for about 3 months. And it was of course, a big crew with nice, fancy, huge cameras, and yeah, it was quite interesting to work with them. And it's just nice to, especially because they shoot so much, because you don't know what's gonna come on the screen finally. So, they would, we would sit and they would say, well, we should do this because this might be interesting. So they will just go on shooting so many different things, and then out of that they will select, what they wanna show, because they kind of have to make a story. So they'll make a story out of it. And basically we were just continuing our work, and only thing that would change was to, if they wanted us to, stand in a particular angle or something, we have to, if they say, well, you have to stand on this side, so yeah, that's all. But otherwise, we were just carrying out a routine work. If we need to, collect blood from an elephant, we were just doing that, and so on.
Let's take one last question that has just popped up.
Sure.
Vaishali asks, would you suggest private practice or government practice?
It depends. If you like traveling, go for the private practice. If you don't like traveling, go for the government. And I don't know, government job for me is not my cup of tea. So it totally depends. It totally depends on. I think private practice, of course, you cannot do in case of, if you are talking about wildlife, you cannot, like, open a clinic for wild animals. You have to go with some group like Wildlife Resource or some other organization that is working with wildlife. Uh, but yeah, I would say private sector is much more flexible. compared to government jobs, and I think you can prove yourself more in private sector in government jobs. Yeah, so it totally depends on what you want to do.
Yeah, it does. It depends on, you have to identify yourself first
Yeah.
and know what you want before anything in life, career, I
Yeah.
think.
Yeah, and in private sector, if you're working in private sector, especially with wildlife, there's going to be good amount of traveling. So if you're ready for that, it's fine.
Yeah. Okay, should we end the question answer round now, Ruchi? All right.
Yes.
I would like to first of all thank you, sir, that you have joined us on such a short notice.
Thank you for
And
inviting me.
yes, it was really great to have you here, and your study and your the work you do with Wildlife SOS is amazing, and it's immense. Like the research and your journey was amazing. As we have a lot of UG students watching us and are here with us, I'm sure your talk and question answer round has inspired all of them and has guided them to pursue future in their wildlife
Yeah, glad
career.
to know. Glad to know.
Yeah. And yeah, I hope all the budding vets and wildlife enthusiasts who are also with us have enjoyed the session. I'm grateful to IVSA also to provide us with such a enriching platform and giving us this opportunity to hold such sessions. And thank you, Ruchi and Indranil, for coordinating and moderating this event and yeah, making it happen overnight. Today's event was literally, it was a success. And lastly, thank you to all the viewers for joining us and being such a wonderful audience and for interacting so much with Sir. And yeah, thank you so much. I will,
I
we
would
will,
also like
yeah, sorry, we will
like
share
to thank you.
email ID and mobile number with you guys. Yeah, Ruchi, over to
Sure.
you.
And I would also like to thank Indranil for all the posters and the amazing work that he's doing handling the social media platforms. So good job.
Yeah, super.
Okay, I think we can end the session now.
Yeah,
All right.
okay,
Bye.
thank you, sir.